Hello and welcome to your Harvest edition of Virtual Church with the Organist Entertains here at Bellshill Central Parish Church. The hymns and songs requested tonight have been requested over the course of our virtual churches with an extra few which fitted tonight's episode. So, as I said last week, I thought I'd kind of ran out of ideas of where to sit down the stairs. So I came up the stairs, not sitting in a particular pew, but to give the view of what the organ looks like from upstairs and where it sounds its best, bouncing off the ceiling, the arches, and all of the other plasterwork in the upper level of the church. So as I said, tonight is your Harvest edition of Virtual Church. We begin with a famous, traditional, and much loved harvest hymn. Come, ye thankful people, come. Now this Harvest Festival hymn was written in 1844 by Henry Alford, and we sing it to the tune of St. George's Windsor by George Elvey. Alford wrote the hymn, Come Ye Thankful People Come, in 1884 when he was the rector of Aston Sandford Church in Buckinghamshire. It was first published in the Hymns and Psalms of 1844 with 7 verses. This was revised in 1865 with 4 verses. And 4 verses is what it has today. So the hymn was requested by my mum, Mary, and it's a hymn that I'm looking back in the archives. We haven't actually sang the words, Come ye thankful people come, for quite a while, but we have sung the tune St. George's Windsor most harvest Sundays, however set to different words. But tonight we have the traditional words of Come ye thankful people come. Our second hymn tonight continues in the harvest theme. It is For the Beauty of the Earth, which was written by Folliot S. Pierpoint. It first appeared in 1864. The tune that we sing it to here in Bellshill is Lucerna Laudoniae by David Evans. You can also sing it to the tune of Dix, D-I-X, which is more familiar to people to As With Gladness, Men of Old. However, we sing it to the traditional tune. This hasn't been requested by anyone, but looking through the archives of all our previous services to get some hymns and songs for the online worship just now, we've sang this each Harvest Sunday for the last 4 years. Starting the service when the children and young people bring in some harvest gifts and place them at the front of the choir box for our harvest display. So here we have For the Beauty of the Earth. Over the last couple of virtual churches, I've inserted at least 2 things purely for organ. Tonight's first piece, is a variation on We Plough the Fields and Scatter. It's from an American collection from the Lorenz Corporation, and it does have a decidedly American feel to it. It uses the swell horn as the solo stop for the tune, and it shows off some of the flute stops, the diapason stops, and the principal stops of the organ. I think I played this last year before the service began, but it could be used as suitably for the collecting of our offering. So I will play this now when our offering would normally take place at church after our second hymn. So enjoy these variations on "We Plough the Fields and Scatter." Our third item of praise in tonight's Harvest Virtual Church is a request from Morag MacLeod, a follower and congregation member of these virtual churches. It is the hymn, "We Plough the Fields and Scatter," and this was requested in episode 19 by Morag. Now, "We Plough the Fields and Scatter" is a hymn of German origin, commonly associated with harvest festivals. It was written by the poet Matthias Claudius as "Wir flogen und wir strohen," and it was published in 1782, and it was set to music in the year 1800, attributed to Johann Schultz. It was then translated into English by Jane Montgomery Campbell in 1861. It's a tremendous hymn, and it's actually in the spring section of the Red CH3 book. However, that's what harvest is all about. We think about all the different seasons, how they affect each other. Without one, you wouldn't have the next. So without spring, you wouldn't have summer. Without summer, you wouldn't have autumn. So therefore, you wouldn't have harvest. We plough the fields and scatter, requested by Morag MacLeod. Our next hymn is All Things Bright and Beautiful. Now, I didn't start taking a right note of all the hymns and requests of the Organist Entertains until about episode 9, because I really didn't think that I would be still doing these, at least on a weekly basis, some 32 episodes later. Now, I think that this may have been requested by George Clark. I know that I certainly mentioned two people in a congregation, Jean Hargrave and a little granddaughter, Florence. Now, Florence has a little book that she brings to church with her called All Things Bright and Beautiful. And I do know that she does like at least hearing the tune to All Things Bright and Beautiful. Perhaps Grand Jean has played it to her, and that's why she knows it. However, it's a hymn that is often requested. The hymn is written by Cecil Francis Alexander, and it was first published in Hymns for Little Children. The melody can sometimes cause great consternation. The tune is, of course, All Things Bright and Beautiful. and it is an adaptation of an English country dance tune, which was adapted by Martin Shaw and William Henry Monk. In the hymn book, there is another set tune to it, and that is called Royal Oak, and that is by Frederick Arthur Ouseley. However, we sing it to the tune All Things Bright and Beautiful, and I'm sure many of us remember this from Sunday school days and even school days when you would sing this for perhaps an end-of-term assembly in church. All Things Bright and Beautiful, it talks about creation everywhere. The flowers that open, the birds that sing, the glowing colours and their tiny wings. We continue outdoors and we look at landscapes, the purple-headed mountain, the river running by, the sunset that brightens the sky, the cold wind in the winter, pleasant summer sun, and the ripe fruits in the garden. And it reminds us that God made them, everyone. There are other verses which we don't sing or are in the church hymn book. For example, the rich man in his castle, the poor man at his gate. God made them high and lowly, and he ordered their estate. So it is a hymn which talks about all of God's creation. And I do hope that you enjoy singing along with All Things Bright and Beautiful. And I also play a little bit of Royal Oak, just for those people that prefer that particular tune. However, all the verses that we have in the hymn book are played to tonight to All Things Bright and Beautiful. Our fifth hymn tonight in our Harvest Virtual Church is the hymn Summer Suns Are Glowing Over Land and Sea. Now, this was most recently requested for episode 28 from Sheena Bowman. But I do know that it was requested much earlier than that by Hugh Ainsley. Now, the hymn, Summer Suns Are Glowing, was written by William Walsham Howe in 1871. And it is set to the tune of Ruth. Our previous church hymn book didn't have it to the tune of Ruth, and perhaps that's why it wasn't sang as much. However, it does appear in our new version of the hymn book with the correct tune of Ruth and with the 4 verses written by William Howe. Summer suns are glowing over land and sea. Happy light is flowing, bountiful and free. Everything rejoices in the mellow rays. All earth's 1,000 voices swell the psalm of praise. So without summer suns glowing, we wouldn't have summer, and then we wouldn't have the glorious autumnal colours that we get through September, October and November, just as the harvests are harvested and we celebrate all the bounty that is round about us. So thanks to Sheena and Hugh for previously requesting Summer Suns Are Glowing. Our next harvest song is a more modern one, and I certainly remember singing it at primary school and Sunday school. It is the song, Who Put the Colours in the Rainbow? It's a lively song, reminding us that God is creator, the creator of the wonderful world in which we live. And it's an unusual song because it is a song with words which are mainly full of questions. However, it does provide us with the answer right at the end. God made all of these. The words and music were written by J.P. Booth, and it was arranged by Douglas Coombs, who wrote or arranged many children's hymns and songs. It was requested by my mum, Mary Mathew, back in episode 24. And so it makes a welcome appearance back here for our Harvest virtual church. So enjoy Who Put the Colours in the Rainbow. When we hear about the rainbow, see snowflakes, humps and camels, tail on the monkey, Earth, Mars, and even a honeybee that dances. We're almost at the end of tonight's virtual Harvest Church, and we sing a hymn which I came across in the hymn book, which I remember being sung back in church, and just wondering what some of these words meant. It is the hymn, "By the rutted roads we follow, fallow fields are rested now." It is a hymn written by John Arlott, and it doesn't feature in the current hymn book, but it featured in CH3. It's set to the hymn tune Sussex, which is a beautiful hymn tune, and it's quite light and it's a little bit bouncy. It is a traditional English tune, and it was arranged and harmonised by Ralph Vaughan Williams. So here we have "By the Rutted Roads We Follow." Our penultimate hymn and request tonight is the hymn Bringing in the Sheaves. Bringing in the Sheaves is a popular American gospel song. The lyrics were written in 1874 by Knowles Shaw, who was inspired by Psalm 126. He that goeth forth and weeping, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. Shaw also wrote the music for the words. However, they are now usually set to the tune which we will play and sing along with tonight, written by George Minor in 1880. The hymn has been requested from Elspeth Dornan, who sings in our choir here at Bellshill Central and is much looking forward to hearing and singing along with Bringing in the Sheaves. So thanks, Elspeth, for bringing in the sheaves with us this harvest time. Our final hymn tonight in Harvest Virtual Church here from Bellshill Central is Now Thank We All Our God. This was requested back in episode 24 by Ian and Mary MacLeod, members of Craiglockhart Church in Edinburgh, and it was requested through their friend John Hume for the occasion of their wedding anniversary, because the hymn had been sang at their wedding. Now Thank We All Our God is obviously a famous hymn. And the background to the hymn is the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, when, crammed with refugees, the walled town of Eilenburg in Saxony had to live through famine, disorder, and the plague. At one point, the pastor, Martin Rinkhart, often had to read the funeral services for over 40 to 50 people all died at once. He ministered at the burial of nearly 5,000 people. So after some 19 years of ministering in the circumstances, it is remarkable that he was still able to publish the volume containing this resounding outpouring of gratitude to God. The translation is by Catherine Winkworth, whose Lyra Germanicae was a devotional classic from which many of the outstanding translations, and with 2 other collections, some 400 hymns in all, are still widely known and sung. She was a pioneer in the higher education of women, and there is a memorial to her at Bristol Cathedral, the city where she latterly lived and worked. The tune, Nundankit, is by Johann Kruger, who died in 1662, the composer of some of the greatest and best loved of our German chorale melodies. This is a wonderfully loud and rousing way to finish tonight's Harvest Virtual Church, giving praise and thanks for the gift of harvest, the gift of creation, and saying thank you for everything that has been given to us. Concluding tonight, we stick with harvest and thanksgiving. I am playing a short excerpt from Siegfried Karg Ellert's Choral Improvisation for Organ, number 59, Nundankit alle Gott. Of course, that is the tune. Now thank we all our God. The tune is in there somewhere, and I do encourage you all to listen out for it. There are little chunks of it throughout the whole choral improvisation. However, the part that I'm going to play just to finish tonight it contains the beginning element of the tune. And I do hope that you hear it and that you do enjoy it. Siegfried Karg Ehlert was a composer from Germany in the early part of the 20th century. He was born in 1877 and died in 1933. He regarded himself as an outsider. His notable influences included Johann Sebastian Bach, Edward Grieg, Claude Debussy, and Max Reger. In general terms, his musical style is characterized as being late Romantic with impressionistic tendencies. His profound knowledge of musical theory allowed him to stretch the limits of traditional harmony without losing the overall coherence of the piece. Looking through his notable works, there is 66 choral improvisations for organ, and number 59 is Non dankit alle Gott. So enjoy this piece to finish our Harvest Virtual Church, and I look forward to being back at church with you next week. Stay safe, keep well, and we'll see you next week.